begin. All right, welcome everyone. My name is Ben Hansen. I am one of the career counselors in Career and Internship Services, and this is a joint program between my office as well as CLA Career Services. So we'll get to meet my colleague Nick and our wonderful panelists in a second. But yeah, welcome to the event. We're going to be talking about careers in business, and we're going to have a panel to really dive into that subject here. So let me move forward here. Our agenda today is incredibly straightforward. We have 45 minutes, so we're really, excuse me, we're really going to cover two things. I'm going to provide a really brief overview of business careers because, as we'll talk about in a second, it is a massive field, and so an overview is probably just as good for a sake of time as opposed to try to diving into anything and not doing it justice whatsoever. So I'll cover that, and then I'll hand things over to Nick in a second to really have our panelists be able to provide their insights via Q&A. So if at any time, if it's right now, if you have specific questions that you would like to submit, please throw those in the Q&A section specifically. And then we can kind of address those kind of the first come, first serve. I know we'll also have some questions to kind of get the conversation rolling. So at any point, please do that because we'd love it for it to be as interactive and for you to get as much out of this for your time here today. So we will be joined by these lovely people in just a second. So thank you, Pamela, Matt, and Matthew for joining us here today. We're really excited to get your insights. So we'll do a full introduction in just a second, but that is coming. So I'll just dive into the overview. So again, as I was saying, business is an incredibly broad field. There are so many things you can do with it. And as you look at it with the different business functions we'll cover in just a moment, you'll really see that the business field spans all industries as well. So I think it's one of those things that a lot of students in particular are drawn to because it's full of opportunity. You feel like there's definitely going to be something for you where you can kind of turn yourself, having that education applied to a really rewarding career. So I think there's a lot to be able to take advantage of. And so that makes it a really exciting pathway to really consider going into. But on the flip side of that, because of how incredibly broad it is, a lot of times it can also be equally overwhelming. If you're like me at all, sometimes maybe you're at a restaurant and if it's a really big menu, you're like, I don't know what I want to do because there's almost too much to choose from. Sometimes that can happen with folks when they're navigating the business field in particular. So I think the really important thing that's paramount when it comes to pursuing something within business is to really explore your options. So we'll cover some really good tips from our career counselor points of view that can help you navigate exciting but sometimes overwhelming possibilities when it comes to business. So this is not an exhaustive list by any means. It's just kind of a really quick way of throwing together, hey, what are some really common areas our students will go into in particular? So you'll see these kinds of main functions that we kind of often see our students go into that are in business. So maybe one of the first things you might think about is, being able to take on some sort of leadership role or being a manager. So management's that first section. And then we give you an idea of what are maybe some common areas or possible job titles that we see our students go into year after year. So if it's management as an example here, perhaps you might go on as some sort of trainee, maybe a type of leadership pipeline program. Each company has their own way of kind of labeling and attracting candidates this way, but that might be a common way that you are kind of getting your foot into the door, getting some experience in a business, and then being able to be ready to take on some sort of leadership role after that. So it's really common. Sales is on here. Many people would argue that this is the most important aspect of any one business is, how well are you doing in sales is going to really determine the health and growth of your particular company. So that's a critical component. And as you can see, there are so many others. Human resources. So luckily we have Pamela here today that might be able to shed some light on that in a second. Consulting, maybe some of you are interested in being your own boss and going the entrepreneurship route. An area I see a lot of my students going into is some sort of data science. So maybe kind of an analyst position, maybe it's a business or data analyst, financial analyst. And so we'll have some different perspectives here on our panel today to shed some light on these things as people have kind of touched on multiple areas over time. So again, I'm not going to cover every single one of these, but as you can see on this list here, there's a lot of different opportunities that one could pursue but because that's a lot to do, exploration is really important. So I'll get to this last slide here. So what I mean by exploration for your career is just learning about different occupations that are out there and how you might fit in with those things. So is there some sort of fit based on your skill set that you're honing right now? Maybe your interests, your values, your personality. We all bring these different combinations of ourselves and our identities to what we go into for work. And so sometimes there's fits that are out there that are better than others though. Instead of kind of randomly doing it, we can kind of give you some suggestions here to intentionally navigate something that is complex, like, exploring your career, because it's a big part of your identity. So CLA happens to have a really wonderful career management model. So that's what I have on the top right of your screen, because this is a process you're going to find yourself going through again and again as you change jobs, get into a career initially, and et cetera. So the important part today is really talking about exploring, because there's so many options to choose from. Then from there, you usually tend to get some sort of experience. It starts to shape the pathway that you find yourself in. And then along that way, you usually are exposed to more and more things that you would never have heard about before. And then we might be kind of changing things and doing other things, and you're finding yourself exploring all over again. So it does repeat itself. And some tips that we want to really give you to, again, navigate those things intentionally are these 4 resources. So in a second, when I unshare my screen, I'll throw this presentation in there so you can access the links. But the first thing I want to really mention is finding your career center. So we often have career outcomes for every major. So if you want to say, hey, where do graduates go? That can be really insightful. We have all that information. If you want to talk to a career counselor, like someone like Nick or myself or others in your college, they're wonderful resources. Obviously, I'm biased there, but we can help you navigate this process. There's also tools like career assessments that can help you identify those interests if these things don't come naturally to you, or it's not immediately something you're aware and readily available to your knowledge. That can be a really helpful tool to start spelling those things out about, hey, what might be a fit for you. One of my favorite tools on here is a thing called Own It, the occupational network. So it's a really comprehensive tool, because you might be hearing about all these things in classes like, hey, there's these jobs people are doing, but if you've never done it or been exposed to it, you might be like, I don't really know what that means. So this tool is super helpful for spelling those things out. So for instance, you could type in business analyst on there and be like, oh, I know other job titles. I know what they do in a nutshell. I get all these skills and abilities. How much education might I need? Is the job outlook growing, declining? Because all those things might be factors on you deciding, hey, is this something I want to pursue? How much money do they make? So that can be a really helpful tool to be like, hey, I'm going to spell things out, and just instead of just kind of nodding along and be like, yep, I think I know what they mean by that. It's not super helpful. So the last point here is then when you gather more information, people usually have that light bulb moment when they start talking with people who are doing some things that they can kind of start seeing themselves doing themselves. So for instance, if you're doing an informational interview, that's just a chance to pick someone's brain who's performing a role that you are considering. So it's a great tool for doing some research, kind of seeing how you feel about it, as well as maybe doing some networking if you're getting more serious about becoming XYZ. So again, it's when we teach our career classes, this is one of those assignments that everyone just loves and they get so much out of it. So I'd certainly encourage you to do it yourself. So you don't need to take a course to do this. You can do this at any point. So all those things are linked on here so you can kind of follow up those resources. So, and that actually segues us into the next portion of what we wanted to talk about, which is really benefiting from those who have perspective in the industry. So taking advantage of that. So that's why I try to rapid fire through all that so we can kind of turn things over and talk to our panelists. So with that, thank you for listening to that. And I want to just hand it over to Nick, and I'll kind of monitor the chat and Q&A from here. So Nick, go for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. And thank you to all of you who are tuning in. Again, my name is Nick Gofford. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm a career counselor in CLA Career Services. And I actively work to support business interested students with their career planning. So thank you again to our 3 panelists for being here today. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you all and getting to know you a little bit better. So I will go right into our questions. So just to kind of give the audience a better idea of who you all are, if each of you could just go around quickly and just mention your name, pronouns, if you would like to share those that you use, and then your role in your organization.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pamela McClaney. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a lead executive campus recruiter at Target.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Stellpflug. He, him pronouns. I work for CHS, and I am a financial underwriter with them.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Mukomela. I'm a product manager at Polaris Industries. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you all again for being here. Really appreciate it. So I do have a list of questions and no pressure for everyone to answer every question, but just to give the audience a better idea of, how they can get into the business industry. So our first question is, could you please describe your academic background and how you first became interested in a career in business?
Not everyone at once. I'll jump in on that one first. So I came to the U of M and I was thinking I would pursue a career in public health and public policy. And there's not a specific undergraduate program for that. So I kind of struggled to think what major I would actually select. So I came to the U of M not knowing what major I would really pursue, just kind of had a long-term kind of idea about what I might do one day. And after taking an economics course in my freshman year, I really developed an interest in business, and I did well on that course. And I started to think about, okay, well, I'm in the College of Liberal Arts. What are the business majors that I might pursue? And I also learned about the other minors that I might pursue to help supplement my major. But truly, I did not know, and I did not select my major until I think sometime during my sophomore year. So through that experience, I had a lot of discussions with family and friends, and ultimately I landed on an economics major, which I greatly appreciate now. It has served me very well in my career. And I supplemented that with a management minor through the Carlson School. And that prepared me really well for a broad business background. It gave me enough of the skills and knowledge that I needed to start having business career discussions outside of the University of Minnesota. And the way I broke into the business field was through actually just networking with a friend, and went out to happy hour with a friend and learned about an opportunity to get into technology consulting, which was not on my radar at all. But my first choice in job had kind of fallen through. So I said, yeah, I'll take a look at this technology consulting thing. And ultimately that was that turned out to be a great thing for me. And the reason I really enjoyed that so much was because it gave me exposure to multiple industries in consulting. So I tried a products industry, I tried an e-commerce industry, which were very different business models. And I also worked on different functions within those projects. So just in a short 2-year stint in that technology consulting season of my career, I had exposure to multiple industries and functions, which ultimately helped me learn what I was really interested in. And that set me off on the for my next several steps from that point on.
I got my bachelor's degree from Mizzou, or the University of Missouri, and I always knew that I was going to major in business, but I didn't know specifically what emphasis. So I didn't know if I wanted to go into management or marketing, and I landed on marketing. I really enjoyed my consumer behavior and some of those classes that I had on campus, and I thought I wanted to go into PR, more so around communications. I had a internship at a small PR firm in Columbia, Missouri, and actually decided that that was not what I wanted to do. But I think an internship position is really helpful to understand what you love to do, and then also what you don't like potentially as well. And so that's okay as well. So right before my senior year, so after my internship position, I was doing a lot of like campus recruiting, and I ended up networking with a recruiter at Target. And so ended up pursuing a business analyst role at Target initially. And so that's how I started at Target and moved to Minneapolis from Missouri. to target for that role. And so I was really doing a lot of supporting vendor relationships and forecasting sales and trends for Target in a couple areas. But then at the same time, I got involved in our intern program and fell in love with it. And that was something that really kind of catapulted me into HR realm of business. And so I think also you may come in and not necessarily know 100% what you want to do, or like all of the positions or teams or things that you didn't have exposure to in school. And so I never really thought about being a campus recruiter. It was something, now looking back, my skills absolutely align to this role. But I think also just being open to understanding like the things that you love to do, the things that you're great at, and then exploring once you are with the company as well too, because there may be roles, there may be teams that you didn't really know existed. And so I'm sure I may have a position at Target in the future that I have no visibility into right now. So just having those options and being open to learning more.
For me, my path was pretty straightforward, I guess. I knew I wanted to go to the U of M and I wanted to be in the CFANS school. And it was just kind of, I picked the business school because that was the one that had the most visibility and probably the biggest, broadest majors that you could choose from. And really what drove me into deciding what I wanted to do was my internships. I had one internship that I really liked. It was more of the analyst role. And then my junior year, I had more of a sales and marketing internship. And I realized that is not what I wanted to do. I did not have a good time. And so that was really beneficial looking back at my experience now, realizing that it was tough through that summer, but I realized that that's not what I wanted to do. And then looking at CHS specifically, I just kind of fell into this role. I had a friend who was working at CHS and I applied for a job on his team, but I didn't get that one. I just kind of fell into my credit analyst role where I am now. So it was pretty straightforward. I just got lucky, I guess.
Awesome. So you all shared a little bit more about the experiences that you gained while you were in college. Did any of you have an internship or any other type of experience that was not business related? And if so, how did you leverage that to then break eventually into the business field? And if that doesn't apply to anyone, then I guess, do any of you have thoughts on how students can better use their experiences outside of business and really use them to get entry into the business field?
I had an internship. It was a sales internship. And so I guess in some ways it was in the business field, but it was direct selling. And kind of like Matthew mentioned, what that taught me is that was something I don't want to do, at least not right now. And so it was a little bit of back to the drawing board for me. And I would just say, I would reiterate a key at that point. I think what you're getting at, Nick, is how do you know during your undergraduate where you might go, especially if you don't have any business experience? And I would say one of the things that really helped me with that was just learning. And that's what your career model and that Ben walked through really highlighted well, is get some exposure to things, try a diverse set of things, and really pay attention to what do you like and what don't you like. I think the more you can do that during your undergraduate, the better that'll serve you.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Matt. I appreciate it. All right, so kind of going off of internships, we have a lot of University of Minnesota students who are currently seeking internships and other types of experiences. And as we know, with the COVID-19 pandemic, that has proven to be challenging in a variety of aspects. So do any of you have advice on how our current students might be able to secure an internship right now within business?
So outside of going through, career websites and then also like Gold Pass or Handshake as well too, just thinking about like how you can, I guess, up your brand within yourself virtually, right? And so We at Target have had a couple different sessions on LinkedIn and how to utilize LinkedIn to, potentially make sure that all of your skills and what you're looking for is represented there, but then also actually how to use it as like a search tool as well too. So I would say thinking about all of the virtual platforms that you're on to see if you feel like you're utilizing them to the best of your ability. So do you have a picture on there? Do you have your latest information of like the skills or experiences that you've had on there? But then also outside of just your profile, there's so much that you can do with the free LinkedIn profile for searching alumni of your school, searching individuals who are at companies that you may actually be looking for, interested in, and going from there. So you can kind of already have that and build your network that way to even see who you're already connected with as well. And then also starting those conversations as well. And then one thing that I appreciate, especially as a recruiter profile on LinkedIn, is potentially starting a conversation with a message just talking about like, I saw your profile, would love to connect. And so I would avoid going in all at once with your ask. And so like, potentially starting the message with like, hey, would love to connect, saw your profile, blah, blah, blah. And then after a connection, then start to have those conversations about like, I saw this role, I was looking for this, looking for that. And so it can be a little bit overwhelming if you start with everything that you're looking for right at the top.
That's a good point, and recruiters are a really good tool. If you have a network that you know of that are here in the cities, that's a good place to start too. Your friends, your family, they're happy to help. They're excited. They'll help you get whatever they can. Even if you don't, even a professor, if you go have a professor that you like, they'll be happy to at least connect you to someone that they know, at least get your foot in the door, which is a good place to start.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those perspectives. Very helpful. So we're going to continue with the theme of networking, which is very important, as we all know. So we have many students here at the University of Minnesota, ranging from those about to finish their first year, all the way to those who are about to graduate. For those early on in their collegiate career, they might feel that they don't have many professional connections, particularly within the business field. So how would you all recommend they get to networking and building those relationships? And then what do you personally like to see when you are being networked with? And some of you kind of touched on this already, but just in general, how do we break through this fear of networking, especially in the midst of this pandemic, but also acknowledging that this pandemic, right, will eventually end and we will at some point go back to a sense of normalcy. So how can students really network effectively, virtually and in person?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nick. And I think it's important to first acknowledge networking might be uncomfortable to some folks. It might be a very natural and easy thing for some folks, but it might be very uncomfortable for others. But I would say for both of those groups, the best place to start networking is with your existing relationships that are very strong. That can be family, friends. Matt, I thought that was a great, Matthew, the example you had with a professor is a great one too, that you don't hear a lot about, but can be a great relationship to leverage in that way. And so I would just start having discussions that maybe you haven't had before with people you already know and talk to, family, friends, etc. And in that way, you can make introductions to new folks. So that's kind of almost a process view of that, how you would do that. The other thing to think about then is, well, what do you talk to them about? And I think that's where it comes back to learning. Before you go have a discussion with someone in your network, think about what you're trying to learn or understand. And this doesn't have to be like a 5-year plan. It can be, hey, I heard about a friend or a family member or someone in your life that is maybe in a job, that you thought sounded interesting. And maybe you did a little bit of research on that job and you thought, that actually does sound kind of interesting to me. That's a great time to set up a discussion with someone who can either tell you, if you know someone who can talk to you about it directly, that's great. If not, they might know someone who can.
I think if you're here today or if you're listening to it after the fact, you're already on the right path of like trying to educate yourself. You're in the right rooms. And I think that's something that you can continue to explore. And so definitely take advantage of career services, take advantage of some of the events that are already offered to you. And then if there are specific companies that you know you want to go after, try to think about like their events that they may be putting on, whether virtually right now or in person in the future as well too. So that's something that I would think about as well. And then from a networking perspective, that's something that won't go away even after you secure your first job after graduation. So it's something that you have to think about in terms of how do you want to consistently hone into that skill. And so to Matt's point, it may be uncomfortable in some instances. So yeah, maybe start with the individuals that you feel a little bit more comfortable with, and then go from there to learn on, if it was someone else that you're setting up a time with, understanding what you want to get out of that situation. So thinking about like what your ask is or what you want to learn. And I would say technically you're networking at a career fair too. And so just thinking about as we go back there or even in a virtual setting, making sure that you do a little bit of research before interacting with, the representatives at the career fair or at another setting. And so I would say it definitely stands out to me as a recruiter and to other individuals usually as well, if you know a little bit something about the company or you've shown that you are passionate in some way. So sometimes we get questions about like, what internships do you target host over the summer? Where that information is on our website, easily available. And so thinking about like the information to make sure you have a meaningful conversation, to really dig into things that maybe aren't posted online or some of the things that you can get their perspective on to go deeper into the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And for any of the underclassmen, if you don't really know where to start, I know there's a lot of student groups specific at the U of M. They have a student group for everything and anything you can even think of. And that is a good way to at least get yourself in the same room with people who share those interests, or even decide that maybe that's not where you want to be and pick a different student group, but that's a good place to start.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And I really want to illustrate right to our audience that networking does not have to be scary. Networking can be a very impactful experience, one that you don't have to worry about. And we definitely know that comfort levels vary when it comes to networking. So hopefully the panelists really just prove the point that they are eager to talk to you. They want to network with you. They want to help you. And just really remembering that all professionals started off at the same place that you were at one point, scared, anxious, didn't have any connections, right? And when you get to the point in your career where then, people are coming to you, it's exciting, right? You want to give back, you want to help because you were helped at one point in your career. So just really think of it as like a never-ending cycle of just helping, supporting, and uplifting each other to, meet our fullest potential. That's how I like to think of it. So thank you all again for that. And then going into our last question, the focus of this panel is really targeted at students who are coming from, our colleges in particular. So colleges of continuing and professional studies, design, food, agricultural, and natural resource sciences, and then the College of Liberal Arts. So those colleges specifically, and if you belong to other colleges, hello and welcome. Not saying that you are not welcome here, welcome. But just really saying that, we have such unique majors, right? And students can get such different experiences within these colleges and within these majors. So thinking specifically of these colleges, what advice would you all have for students, again, to really break into business? How can they talk about the liberal arts advantage, right? Or talk about being a College of Design student? How can these students, really articulate the uniqueness of their experiences as a means to get where they're looking to go?
Yeah, that's a great question. A couple of thoughts on that one that I would share. I think first, now more than ever, employers are really looking for a diverse set of skills and talent. And certainly I would guess Pamela can speak to that directly as a recruiter, but the CLA and non-business majors really check that box in a unique way, in that you can approach problems differently. You think about things differently, and that's a really good thing when employers are building out teams. So I think that's the first thought. Maybe I'll let one of the other two panelists jump in as well.
Speaking specifically to the AFBM major, I know they have a really good partnership with the School of Business. So I took, I don't know, most of my classes through Carlson, and that was a good way to have those business focused classes, and still on some of my classes go more of the agriculture route and have a good focus on the ones that I were really interested in. But it gave me a good variety of classes to choose from. I think was really helpful.
Yeah, and then I would say think about any unique opportunities that you think would be an advantage to you in your college. Just because I would say also don't assume that a recruiter understands, or someone who you're talking to as well, understands that advantage. So try to paint the picture of like why that's special, or why this accomplishment is something that's special. Was this something that was awarded or experienced that only, top 10% or some individuals received, or you've had maybe smaller courses and you were able to gain more relationship building with a professor or with someone who really catapulted your career as well. So I would say like lean into the experiences that could differentiate yourself, and then even like standing out like among other students, potentially even in a job application from like a recruiter perspective, look at the qualifications that are on the job description and try to make sure that you can make sure that your resume is tailored to address those qualifications. So a lot of times we don't expect you to have all, but try to think about some of those things. And I do see sometimes students sell themselves short a little bit to say like they don't have leadership experience, but then I look at their resume and they've been a mentor, they've been a resident assistant, they've been a leader in a student organization. So really like reflect on the experiences that you've had to think about how you can transition those into an internship and then potentially full-time from there.
One thing I might add as well is just, when you hear about breaking into business, it's not like breaking through a wall and you're there. It's a process, right? You might have an internship or two and several roles along the way that finally get you into the career field that you're actually interested in. And I think that's quite common. And just hearing from the panelists today, that was very much the case for us, I think too. Matthew, you had a good idea what you wanted to do from the start. You were one of the lucky ones. I wasn't, but certainly that journey can take time, and just take each of those experiences to write your story and pull from it what you really are looking to pull from to propel you to that next step.
This was all so helpful. Thank you all again for sharing. I'm actually going to pass it off to Ben again because we did get some questions in the chat.
Yes, hello everyone. I'll make my video in a second, but I can't multitask worth anything. So we have a couple of questions that have come in, and one of them is specifically for Matt M. Could you shed a little bit more light on kind of what got you into consulting, and could you just kind of talk a little bit about that process for those who might be interested in exploring the consulting field?
Definitely. I think technology and consulting, both of those fields are ones that tend to be more open to a diverse set of backgrounds. They're not looking for someone who has a very specific undergraduate. So that is a nice way to get into a business related field. The other reason consulting is a good place to start is, as I mentioned, it affords you experience across many different industries and functions, just contributing to that those learning cycles that you're gaining, so that you can understand better for yourself what you really like and maybe what you don't. At some point, through consulting, you may find on a particular project that you had a passion for. For me, it was like product development for a physical products company like Polaris, where I work now. I did a project where we were doing some process improvement for a company and their product development processes. And I realized, man, this product development thing sounds really interesting. And that's kind of what set me off on a career trajectory to becoming a product manager. And And there were several steps along that journey that included more schooling as well. So, just know it's not an A to B thing. It can take time, and there's learning, and you can pivot along the way.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Yeah, I often see that all the time, or there's this interesting graph of like, here's what you think your career looks like, this nice linear pathway from one job to the next. And then in reality, it's all over the place of, as you learn and expose to new things. So thank you for that, Matt. Another question that we have in here is, and it's open to anyone on the panel, what are some transferable skills do you think are commonly valued across many industries and organizations?
Were you about to go, Matthew?
Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, I think there are a lot of transferable skills that, regardless of the industry, you would end up needing to utilize. And so one of those being problem solving. And so there's always going to be something to solve regardless of whatever industry you're in. And so thinking about how you potentially think through a process, potentially how you strategize or think through a situation from start to potential outcome as well. Communication, depending on what area you're going into as well. So I think being able to collaborate well with others is a huge thing that that we do at Target, but I think in a lot of ways and across the industries is something that you would experience, whether that's with coworkers, that's with clients elsewhere. So those are the top two that come to my mind automatically, but I'm sure there's so many other ones as well.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. It's more of the soft skills, I think, that are really transferable no matter where you are. Being able to show that you can work with a team, you guys can communicate effectively and efficiently, especially now when everything is remote. It's so much more important now to have that clear communication between your team and even others that you don't necessarily work with on a daily basis.
For sure. And of course, there are some roles that, are very technical. So you have to have more of those skills. But to your point, Matthew, they're definitely, I would say, even in a recruiting process, definitely leaning a little bit more heavy into the soft skills. And if there are specific core skills you need to learn to be able to function in the job, those are easier to teach than soft skills.
I would just add one quick one there too. I think at least starting off in my career, I was not prepared for the amount of Microsoft Excel work that I did. And Microsoft Excel is something you can learn right now. Just a few basic things you can learn are how to do VLOOKUPs, index matches, how to use pivot tables and make charts. Those are core competencies for Excel that you can start to learn now and just reduce that learning curve when you get into a job where they're required for you to perform highly. And same with PowerPoint, actually. PowerPoint, I don't know how many slides you're building for presentations you're building for your classes, but make one for fun, get to use it, and just get to learn it a little bit.
Yeah, I think I can throw a little plug for LinkedIn Learning. Could be also a valuable resource for what Matt's talking about of if you want to learn it right now to give yourself that edge, you have those tools at your disposal. And then, I mean, you don't always get to talk about the importance of VLOOKUP. So I like that you got to get that in there as well. So thank you all for that. I see one more question. And this is again for anybody, how important is a high GPA for a student who might be seeking their first job?
I think there's a lot of positions that say like 3.0 or higher preferred and things like that. So of course, if there's a high GPA on a resume, great. But then at the same time, I think as long as you may have a reasoning behind a lower GPA. And so in some instances, we as recruiters don't always read cover letters, honestly. It depends on the role, or if you feel like your resume doesn't, you want to share more that maybe like that story isn't being told fully through your resume. So I would say just be able to be prepared to speak to maybe, what has caused that. Were you putting yourself through college and working full time or working a lot or doing a lot of other things that kind of made you have to to juggle between school and, you know, things outside of that. So definitely, I wouldn't say that it's a like prerequisite to get a role outside of college for sure, especially if it's even closer to that 3.0, if it's just, you know, shy of that. That's something that we talk about a lot at Target, but again, just maybe be prepared to talk about, you know, what you've learned from that experience or why it is what it is today.
I was always told you don't have to include it on your resume. So it's kind of like a sore subject where you're not necessarily super proud of your GPA that you have. You can leave it off. And if that's something that they require at a job, they'll ask for it. And then that'll give you a good bouncing board of explaining what happened or, you know, why you have a GPA that you do. But that's just what I was always told. Maybe Pamela, you can agree to disagree to that one.
I think it definitely depends on the company, I think. And so sometimes it can be harder to know. So yeah, I agree that I think there's a lot of times where like personally, I don't ask for GPA information, but I know some companies do. And I've heard from some recruiters that they may feel that if you don't have it on there, that you're trying to hide a lower GPA. But at the same time, I think, you know, if you want to leave it off of there, to Matthew's point, I think that's totally fine. And if the conversation goes there, then you guys can have that conversation and just be prepared to speak to it. So yeah, I wouldn't like not consider a candidate if they didn't have their GPA on the resume.
All right. Well, I think that was all of our questions, Ben. Is that correct? It is. All right. Well, one more.
Looks like someone snuck one more in there. Yeah, I'll just throw it out there then, and then I think we'll kind of leave that maybe as our last one here. What is it like starting in a career in a new city after college? Specifically, how difficult is the transition? I know at least one of our panelists can speak to that, but I think that'll kind of close it up for our questions, and I'll hand it back over to Nick after that.
I think that would be me. I think that for sure it helped me grow a lot to be forced to move away from home, start on my own, start to build new relationships and friendships here. So it definitely can be challenging initially because you may be moving to a new city and not necessarily know anyone or know one person, but I really started by getting involved in Target. So I started by going through a lot of the organizations that we have internally. And then that kind of catapulted to start to think about everyone that I wanted to connect with outside and start to build that friend group and things like that outside of work as well too. And then hopefully the company that you potentially are moving to a city for will have resources as well. And so Target had a lot of resources in terms of like where a lot of individuals typically live. What are some of the partnerships we may have with apartment buildings close to the cities, and what is Minneapolis famous for? What are some of the things to do outside of work? Because we know we spend a lot of time at work, of course, but outside of that, are you happy outside of work in the city that you live in? And so I really wanted to take advantage of the resources that were provided to me. And then of course I did a lot of research beforehand on, you know, the things that are important to me. So if it's important to you to live, you know, in downtown where you can walk to a lot of things for your own well-being, or thinking about how transportation works and all those kind of things. So I would say do your research initially, but then also take advantage of like the organizations or some of those networking opportunities that hopefully the company would provide to you, so you can be able to get to know a few people as well. And then even outside of the company, there are groups like meetup groups for individuals who are interested in similar things, to start to get your head around you know, what the community is about and who you can actually connect with.
Fantastic. Well, thank you to the attendees for posting those questions. Those were great questions. And thanks again to the panelists for answering them. That is going to be the conclusion of our event. So again, huge thanks to Matthew, Matt, and Pamela for being here today. It was great hearing from all of you, getting to know you better. And thank you for those that tuned in. Please remember to utilize your resources within your college. Again, every college at the U of M has a career office, so please utilize your career office, your career counselor. There's a lot of support and help there waiting for you. So thank you all again for a great event. And we will be making this event virtually available. So you'll see that soon. So